I'm 27 now, but this happened when I was barely 13, and I still remember every detail like it happened last night. My parents had gone out of town for a Saturday evening, leaving me at home with my older brother, Ethan, who was 19 at the time. The house was a 2-story place in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Maple Ridge, the kind where nothing ever really happens. At least, that's what we believed. At first, I was thrilled. Being home without parents felt like freedom. Ethan told me he was planning to meet up with friends for a few hours and made me swear not to tell our parents. I agreed without hesitation. I trusted him, and honestly, I loved the idea of having the entire house to myself. After he left, the excitement slowly turned into boredom. I ended up downstairs in the living room, flipping through channels until I landed on a horror movie. Watching it alone at night was a terrible decision, but at that age, it felt exciting. About halfway through the movie, I wasn't even paying attention anymore. It wasn't the film that scared me, it was the house itself. The heating system clicking on, the soft creak of floorboards, the wind pushing against the windows. Every sudden sound made my heart jump. I kept glancing toward the staircase, half expecting to see someone standing there. Eventually, I couldn't handle it anymore. I shut off the TV and sprinted upstairs, feeling ridiculous but genuinely terrified. I brushed my teeth quickly in the shared bathroom between my room and my parents', barely looking in the mirror, then rushed back into my bedroom. To distract myself, I turned on my Xbox and played Left 4 Dead for hours. I lost track of time completely. When the game ended and the house went quiet again, I realized how late it had gotten and decided to try to sleep. Not long after lying down, I felt the subtle vibration of the front door closing. I assumed Ethan was back. I stayed in bed, listening. Footsteps moved slowly around the first floor. Too slowly. When Ethan came home, he usually went straight to his room. This time, the sounds lingered. Soft thuds, light footsteps, things being touched. My chest tightened. I walked over to my window and peeked outside. Ethan's car wasn't in the driveway. That's when panic hit me full force. I didn't have a phone. I was too young for one. The only way to call for help was to go downstairs, and that felt impossible. I locked my bedroom door, knowing full well it could be opened from the outside with almost no effort. The only place I could think to hide was the narrow storage closet built into my wall. I squeezed inside, quietly pulling the door shut behind me, trying to slow my breathing. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. Then someone tried my door. The handle moved. A second later, the door opened. Footsteps entered my room. I stayed frozen, barely breathing, listening as the person walked around. The floor creaked under their weight. I heard drawers opening. Something heavy scraped across the floor. Every second felt endless. I was convinced the closet door would open and that would be it. I don't know how long it lasted. Minutes felt like hours. Eventually, the footsteps left. I stayed hidden long after the house went silent again. At some point, I heard Ethan shouting my name from downstairs, his voice tense and angry. He rushed into my room moments later. When I stepped out of the closet, he immediately started yelling, asking what I had done to his room and why things were missing. That's when we both understood. Someone had broken in. We searched the house together. Drawers were open, electronics were gone, a TV, a console, laptops, missing. Ethan called the police immediately. They arrived, took statements, and told us to wait for our parents. When my parents got home around 4 a.m., my dad lost it. He hit Ethan for leaving me alone and for not locking the front door. My mom hugged me tightly and kept saying she was thankful I was alive. Ethan was forced to repay everything that was stolen and was never trusted the same way again. I wasn't punished, but I was changed. Even now, years later, I still remember sitting in that closet, listening to a stranger walk around my room, not knowing if I'd survive the night. It was the most terrifying experience of my life, and it never truly left me. I didn't understand it at the time, but looking back now, that night feels like it was carefully planned.
I was barely old enough for school, still living in a quiet rural town called Pine Hollow, staying with my grandparents after my parents split up. My father worked in a nearby city and visited on weekends. During the week, the house usually felt full. My grandfather, my grandmother, and my Uncle Mark, my dad's younger brother, all under the same roof. Because of that, I was almost never alone. The town was small, the kind where everyone waved at each other and left doors unlocked during the day. Strangers weren't really a thing, or so I was told. Still, one rule was drilled into me constantly. Never open the door for anyone you don't know. There was a neighbor named Rick. He lived a few houses down and was around often enough that he felt familiar. He watched football with my grandfather, drank beer with my uncle, and helped fix trucks or chop wood. During hunting season, if my grandfather brought home a deer, Rick sometimes helped haul it to the shed. He felt safe, or at least that's what I thought. One evening, my grandmother left for her weekly bingo night. My uncle was already gone, out drinking with friends. Later, my grandfather told me he was heading out to pick her up and asked if I wanted to come along. I said no. I was glued to the TV watching cartoons. Before leaving, he knelt down and reminded me of the rule about the door. I promised I wouldn't open it. Then I watched his truck disappear down the road. The house went silent. Not long after, maybe 5 minutes, there was a knock. I remember feeling annoyed more than scared. I ran to the door and called out, asking who it was. A familiar voice answered. Rick's voice. He said my grandfather had just left and that he needed to come inside. I told him no one else was home. He already knew. He said he'd spoken to my uncle and knew he wouldn't be back for a while. Then he laughed and said he wasn't a stranger. In my young mind, that made sense. I unlocked the door. The second it opened, something felt wrong. Rick was drunk, reeking of alcohol, swaying, his words slurred. He stepped inside and put his hands on my shoulders. I backed away instinctively. I told him he could wait in the kitchen while I went back to the living room. He didn't let go. His voice changed. The friendly tone vanished, replaced by something sharp and angry. He dragged me toward the kitchen and grabbed a large knife from the counter. He pressed it against my stomach and asked if I wanted to be hurt. When I cried, he told me to stop or he'd make it worse. Then he dragged the dull edge of the blade across my throat. I don't remember his exact words after that, only the fear, pure, paralyzing fear. Suddenly, headlights flashed through the window. A truck pulled into the driveway. Before I could scream, Rick clamped his hand over my mouth and turned me toward the doorway. My grandmother walked in first. Her face went white the moment she saw him holding me with the knife. She screamed. My grandfather burst through the door seconds later. The look on his face wasn't fear, it was fury. He charged without hesitation. Rick shoved me to the floor as my grandmother grabbed me and shielded my eyes, holding me tight and telling me I was safe. I could hear the struggle, furniture moving, shouting, then silence. When I looked up, my grandfather was forcing Rick out the door, screaming that if he ever came back, he'd regret it. The door slammed and Rick was gone, forever. Years later, after my grandfather passed away, I brought that night up while sitting with my grandmother. I told her how brave he'd been. She didn't smile. She looked uneasy and asked if I remembered something else, that my grandfather had gone hunting later that same night. I vaguely remembered him leaving again, which was strange. He didn't usually hunt at night unless it involved camping. When I asked why, she said she couldn't remember. No police report was ever filed, no charges. Rick was never seen in Pine Hollow again. My grandfather was respected. He went to church with local officers. He was known as an expert hunter. No one would question a late-night drive or a tarp in the back of his truck. As a child, I believed that night ended when Rick left. As an adult, I understand. It probably didn't.
This incident took place a few years back during spring break of 2020 when I was 15 years old. My parents were out of state and I had the house to myself for the night. I remember it being quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence you only notice when you're completely alone.
I was killing time in my bedroom when my phone rang. The call was from a guy I barely talked to from school. I'll call him Tyler. We weren't close at all, so seeing his name pop up already felt strange. I answered anyway. Before I could even say hello, Tyler asked what I was doing. I told him I was just home, not really doing anything. After a short pause, he asked if he could drop someone off at my place for the night. The person he mentioned was an old friend of mine, someone I'd known since elementary school. I'll call him Evan. I told Tyler I wasn't feeling social and just wanted to be alone. He didn't take no for an answer. His tone shifted and he started begging, like genuinely begging for me to let Evan stay. I could hear panic in his voice. At first I stood my ground, but then he sweetened the deal by saying he'd let me use his THC vape if I agreed. That was enough to make me cave, which I still regret. I told him to come over. Evan had always been loud, impulsive, and unfiltered. He never cared what people thought of him. A week earlier, my younger cousin, who went to the same school, had mentioned that Evan was acting off in class, laughing randomly, clapping in silence, saying bizarre things. At one point, he apparently claimed the football coaches were part of some secret society trying to recruit him. I brushed it off at the time. I shouldn't have. When Tyler and Evan arrived at my house in our quiet suburban neighborhood, I met them at the front door. Everything seemed normal at first. I hit the vape Tyler handed me, gave it back, and thanked him. As Tyler turned to leave, he suddenly grabbed Evan by the shoulders. His voice cracked, tears filling his eyes, as he begged him not to do that thing. Evan stared straight through him and calmly said he understood. I had no idea what that thing was, and I didn't ask. Once Tyler drove off, Evan stepped inside. The first thing he asked me was whether all the doors were locked. That question alone made my stomach drop. I told him they were and asked why. He said I should double check. So I walked him down the narrow hallway toward the back entrance and laundry room, showing him both locks. He watched closely but didn't say a word. We stood there in silence for a few seconds. Then, without warning, Evan slowly raised his hand like he was asking to speak. He spread his lips into a wide, unsettling grin, teeth fully exposed. He held the pose for several seconds, then lowered his arm like nothing had happened. I laughed nervously, pretending it was some kind of joke. He asked for water, so we went into the kitchen. As I grabbed bottles from the fridge, I noticed him standing by the silverware drawer. I watched him slide it open and reach toward the knives. I reacted without thinking. I rushed forward, grabbed his wrist before he could pull one out, and slammed the drawer shut. He didn't fight me. He didn't flinch. He just stared, then let out a soft chuckle like I had ruined a prank. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I've never felt fear like that before. The kind where your body goes cold and your brain stops working normally. All I could think about was getting him out of my house alive. Evan finally broke the tension by suggesting we go to the small park at the end of the street. I agreed instantly, acting casual. We walked toward the side door that led to the driveway. I let him step outside first and told him I needed to grab my shoes. He paused, clearly irritated, and told me to hurry up. The moment he stepped out, I shut the door, locked it, and backed away. I immediately called my older brother and told him everything. After hanging up, I went into the kitchen and gathered every knife I could find, carrying them upstairs to my bedroom. I was high, scared, and not thinking clearly, but I knew I couldn't let Evan get access to anything sharp if he came back. My brother showed up within minutes with 3 friends. They found Evan outside, pacing and talking to himself. I stayed inside at first, shaking. When I finally went out, I heard Evan ranting about school coaches being part of the Illuminati and claiming they were planning to assault students as part of some twisted ritual. None of it made sense. Eventually, we decided he needed to go home. There was no chance I was letting him stay after what had happened. One of my brother's friends agreed to drive him, even though Evan insisted his dad was trying to kill him.
Once everything settled down, I called Tyler and demanded to know what had happened before they arrived. He admitted that during the drive, Evan had been reading some kind of manifesto, saying he had to kill himself or someone else to stop his father from killing him first. Tyler panicked and dumped him at my house without warning me. Later, we found out Evan had taken drugs he shouldn't have, triggering severe psychotic episodes and auditory hallucinations. I told my mom about the incident a month later. She was furious and terrified. To this day, I still think about that night and how close it came to ending differently. If I hadn't paid attention in the kitchen, I honestly don't know if I'd be here telling this story.
I was 10 years old when this happened, and even now, years later, I still don't sleep with my bedroom door fully open. It was a bright Saturday afternoon in late summer, the kind of day where the air feels warm but light. My mom, Karen, was getting ready to drive to the grocery store in town. She asked if I wanted to come with her. I remember groaning and begging to stay home. All I wanted to do was play basketball in the street. We had a hoop nailed to the garage, and I promised her I'd be fine. I told her she wouldn't be gone long, maybe an hour or two at most. After a few minutes of arguing, she finally gave in. She reminded me to lock the door and not open it for anyone. I nodded, already halfway outside. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, I pulled the scuffed basketball out of the garage and started shooting. I played little imaginary games with myself, countdown shots, game winners, pretending a crowd was watching. After a while, I stopped near the curb, bouncing the ball slowly as I caught my breath. I was 10 years old when this happened, and even now, years later, I still don't sleep with my bedroom door fully open. It was a bright Saturday afternoon in late summer, the kind of day where the air feels warm but light. My mom, Karen, was getting ready to drive to the grocery store in town. She asked if I wanted to come with her. I remember groaning and begging to stay home. All I wanted to do was play basketball in the street. We had a hoop nailed to the garage, and I promised her I'd be fine. I told her she wouldn't be gone long, maybe an hour or two at most. After a few minutes of arguing, she finally gave in. She reminded me to lock the door and not open it for anyone. I nodded, already halfway outside. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, I pulled the scuffed basketball out of the garage and started shooting. I played little imaginary games with myself, countdown shots, game winners, pretending a crowd was watching. After a while, I stopped near the curb, bouncing the ball slowly as I caught my breath. I ran. I sprinted through the side yard, shoved open the back door, and slammed it behind me. My heart was pounding so loud it felt like it was in my ears. I shouted up the stairs, asking who was home. For a moment, there was only silence. Then a voice answered. "Evan, come upstairs." It wasn't my mom. It wasn't my dad. It wasn't anyone I recognized. The voice sounded calm, almost practiced, like someone trying very hard to sound normal. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the cordless phone from the kitchen counter, ran straight back outside, and called my mom. At first, she thought I was joking. She even sounded annoyed. But when my voice broke and I started crying, when I told her someone had called my name from inside the house, she went quiet. She said she was leaving the store immediately. A police cruiser pulled up almost at the same time she did. I stood in the driveway, shaking, pointing up at the window. The officers searched the house from top to bottom. Closets, attic, under beds, everything. They found nothing. After they left, my mom hugged me, but I could tell she wasn't fully convinced. She warned me that lying about something like this wasn't okay. I swore I was telling the truth. That night, I barely slept. At some point in the dark, a faint sound woke me. It was just enough to pull me out of sleep. I sat up in bed, my eyes adjusting slowly. That's when I saw him. A tall figure stood near the foot of my bed, completely still, watching. My scream came out before I could stop it. The man moved instantly. In 2 quick steps, he crossed the room, yanked open my window, climbed onto the small metal awning outside, and disappeared into the night. My parents burst in seconds later. My dad ran outside barefoot, searching the yard and the alley behind our house. He found nothing. The police came again, but there was nothing left to find. To this day, we don't know how long he'd been inside the house. Long enough to know my name, long enough to watch me, long enough to stand in my bedroom while I slept, and that's the part that still terrifies me the most.